It's the mid-1840s. Theron T. Pond has spent his youth drifting between professions: canal boat captaincy, running a saddle store, and amateur chemistry. But now, his attention has been captured by one particular plant, which is why he finds himself walking through the woodlands around Utica, following the footsteps of a medicine man of the Oneida tribe. His mentor shows him what to seek: a distinctive medium-sized shrub with bizarre flame-colored flowers that last long into the winter months. Together, they harvest the branches of this plant, cutting them off at the base. It looks destructive, but the rootstock remains healthy. Within a few years, the plant will have completely regenerated. Back in Utica, they boil the branches until the water becomes tea-like. At this point, Theron contributes his own chemistry knowledge, distilling the concoction to create a stronger mixture. This liquid will become the foundational ingredient for the products of the T.T. Pond Company, known these days as simply Ponds. And the plant in question is one that has been associated with healing, wellness, and a little bit of mysticism for centuries: witch hazel. You're listening to Plant Connection. Life today can feel overwhelming, like we've drifted away from its natural rhythm. This podcast is your space to slow down, breathe, and rediscover the peace and clarity that come from reconnecting with the natural world. I'm your host, Lisa Cutshaw. Let's reconnect, one plant at a time. Witch hazel is a truly fascinating plant, growing usually in shady understories in eastern North America. The plant is also known as winter bloom, the very last flower of the year. The flowers are decidedly odd-looking. Their shape is maybe best described as spidery. Henry David Thoreau captured it well. He said, "There is something witch-like in the appearance of the witch hazel. Its blossoming, at this irregular period, when other shrubs have lost their leaves as well as blossoms, looks like witches' craft. Just like the witches of folklore, witch hazel has long been associated with medicine. The Oneida medicine man who mentored Theron T. Pond, whose name is sadly lost to history, was well aware of the plant's healing powers. Native Americans had used the plant's leaves, twigs, and bark as an antiseptic and healing accelerant for generations. They passed on this knowledge to colonists, who typically found a way to industrialize the process. Theron T. Pond was one of the first settlers to do so. He developed a healing tonic that he called the Golden Treasure, with witch hazel as the primary active ingredient. Together with his mentor and other associates, he formed the T.T. Pond Company in 1848. It took a few years to perfect the recipe and fine-tune the marketing, and tragically, Theron did not live to see the company's success. He died in 1852, just 4 years after the company's founding. Other colonists were working on similar lines around the same time. A missionary named Dr. Charles Hawes steam distilled the twigs to make Hawes extract, which was sold in Connecticut in the 1840s. A little later, another entrepreneur, Thomas Newton Dixon Sr., brought witch hazel extract production to the commercial scale in 1866, having learnt about the plant from Cherokee and Iroquois teachers. He paid local residents to harvest the plant in great quantities, which established Connecticut as the center of the burgeoning witch hazel industry. His product is still manufactured and sold to this day, the recipe unchanged. Witch hazel products continue to be used for a huge range of ailments: cuts, bruises, sprains, sunburn, the list goes on. Some even swear by it as an aftershave balm. If you're more scientifically minded, you might be feeling skeptical about witch hazel's medicinal value, given its association with alternative medicine, but there is plenty of empirical scientific evidence to back up the claims of healing properties. The plant produces a specific group of tannins, the same chemicals that give tea its color, called hamamelitannins. It's these compounds that give the plant its curative properties. Scientists have found, for instance, that one of these tannins is very good at destroying colon cancer cells. Another pair of studies found applying witch hazel lotion significantly decreased reddening from sunburn. Along with its healing properties, witch hazel is said to have another superpower: finding water. Witch hazel's Y-shaped branches were traditionally used by Native Americans to douse for water. According to believers, witch hazel branches bend down towards hidden underground water, like a fishing rod bends when a fish is on the line. This practice was taken up with enthusiasm by many colonists, who referred to it as water witching. Some say that the most effective twigs must grow so that the sun can be seen to rise and set between the prongs. There's a good juicy tale about witch hazel and its dowsing properties. In the late 1700s, a fugitive named Winchell arrived in Middletown, Vermont, fleeing the neighboring country who wanted him on charges of counterfeiting. He had a reputation as an expert dowser, using witch hazel, and convinced the local priest of his abilities. The priest, named Nathaniel Wood, was also quite the character. He had been excommunicated from the Congregational Church, but had formed his own independent church, preaching that his congregation were the new Israelites, and that the day of reckoning would see the destruction of all the Gentiles. In other words, anyone who wasn't in the congregation. Winchell persuaded him to incorporate dowsing into his church rituals, and the men of the church subsequently became known as rodmen. Their dowsing abilities extended far beyond finding water. They proclaimed that their twitching witch hazel rods could divine someone's lifespan, receive messages from God, and determine that young women's clothes had the devil in them, necessitating their removal. Priest Wood received a message from God via his dowsing rods to build a temple in Middletown and prepare for two impending disasters, a destroying angel, followed by an earthquake. But when the predefined day came, nothing happened, and the end of Priest Wood's church soon followed. Despite its dissolution, it's likely that Priest Wood's church and his dowsing rods had a lasting impact. In fact, they may have influenced fellow Vermonter Joseph Smith, the founder of Mormonism, who was known to douse with witch hazel, not just for water, but also for buried treasure. An 1888 publication entitled Naked Truths About Mormonism says, Joe claimed he could tell where money was buried with a witch hazel consisting of a forked stick of hazel. He held it and claimed the upper end was attracted by the money. Native Americans had other uses for this versatile plant too. Another name for witch hazel, and there are many, is tobacco wood, as it adds flavor to smoking pipes. It's also a good pliant wood for making bows. Funnily enough, this bendiness may reveal the origins of its common name. Despite the connotations, it's unlikely that the witch of witch hazel comes from its supernatural associations. Rather, it likely originates from the Middle English word witch, W-Y-C-H-E, meaning bendable, as found in the name of the similar wych elm that is native to Europe. Basket makers may know that this is also the root of the word wicker. When European settlers arrived in America, they saw similarities between witch hazel and wych elm and transferred over the descriptor accordingly. And as for the hazel part, that comes from the serrated leaves' similarity to those of European hazelnut, though the two plants aren't closely related. We have been principally talking about Hamamelis virginiana, which is our most common native species here in the U.S. Its native range extends from the Great Lakes through the eastern U.S. right down to Texas. Look out for it in the understory of both deciduous and evergreen forests, particularly along streams. In the shade, it often takes on a distinctively odd, crooked shape, with several trunks leading off from a central stem. Of course, the best time of year to spot it is the winter. When other trees are bare of flowers and leaves, the witch hazel retains a burst of color. If you're ecologically disposed, you might have a question lurking in your brain on this topic. With most insects either dead or hibernating in the colder months, what pollinates witch hazel? But the late flowering is actually a clever tactic. As most other flowers have passed, whatever insects remain make a beeline for the witch hazel. Gnats and late flies are prime pollinators, and another important pollinator comes out after dark. Owlet moths are inconspicuous brown moths that are specially adapted to the cold. They can even fly in freezing conditions, which is beyond the abilities of most cold-blooded insects. They do this by shivering their bodies to raise their body temperatures enough to keep their wings working. Their late flight season coincides with the late blooming witch hazel, setting the stage for an important symbiotic relationship. Other moths use the plant in a different way. The endangered witch hazel dagger moth lays its eggs on the large oval leaves. When the caterpillars hatch, they begin munching away. These larvae can attract insect-eating songbirds, such as kinglets and chickadees. So, once pollination has happened, what's next? Given that the flowers are pollinated in the winter, the tree hangs fire until the following fall to develop its fruit. It's very normal for the plant to have flowers and fruit both at the same time. In fact, it's the origin of its genus name, Hamamelis, combining the Greek words hama, meaning at the same time, and melon, meaning fruit. Given all its unique characteristics, it's fitting that nature writer Edwin Way Teale once described it as a botanical individualist. When the woody fruit capsules reach maturity, they explode with ballistic power. The shiny black seeds within can be ejected up to 30 feet away, an effective means of distributing its offspring far and wide. It takes a whole 2 years for these seeds to germinate, if they're not found first by any number of animals, such as cardinals, wild turkeys, beavers, rabbits, deer, or even bear. Some people say that we can eat the seeds too, though I wouldn't recommend it. Taste testers say they are oily and bitter. Walking through a patch of witch hazel in late October can feel like you're within a warming pot of popcorn, which explains their alternative common name, snapping hazel. But beware, if you take witch hazel twigs into your home before the fruit have matured, these mini explosions will send the seeds flying around your house with no warning. Despite its ballistic predilections, witch hazel is a great plant for your garden, especially if you want to maintain a splash of color deep into the winter months. Though normally found in the understory in the wild, they're also usually happy with close to full sunlight. In fact, a moderately sunny patch leads to more flowers and a nice compact vase-like shape to the plant. They're also pretty happy with any soil type, save for chalky soils. One thing they do like is lots of organic matter in the soil. A good compost will get you far here. And it's best to plant it in early spring and hope for a good cold snap in the winter. That will ensure plenty of flowers the following year. There are many different varieties out there. North America is home to 3 species, and there are also 2 more species from across the Pacific, from Japan and China. Many gardeners consider the Chinese species, Hamamelis mollis, as the best for gardens. Its yellow flowers offer a strong citrus scent, but if you want to stick to native species, Hamamelis virginiana is a great choice. It's fast-growing, and its subtle orange flowers look good in autumn. Beyond those examples, as you might suspect, there are many hybrids and cultivars out there giving a huge variety to suit every taste. Given we mentioned Japan, it's perhaps nice to conclude with some folklore from across the Pacific. The Japanese name for their native witch hazel, Hamamelis japonica, is mansaku, which translates as rich crop. It's said that when there are abundant flowers in the winter, the next year will see bountiful harvests. The flowers are also used in traditional tea ceremonies and have been used historically to make rafts and baskets. To me, seeing these parallels across radically different cultures is a sure sign of witch hazel's power and importance. In an age of increasing detachment from the natural world, I think witch hazel could be a powerful beginner plant for reforging that connection. It's distinctive, interesting, and with strong medicinal and spiritual properties. What more can you ask for? When the nights draw in, I will certainly be walking through the forest, seeking out its last rich burst of color. Thank you for joining me on this journey back to nature with Plant Connection. If this episode resonated with you, be sure to tap subscribe or follow on your favorite podcast app so you don't miss the next episode. See you next time.